Hello, everybody, and welcome to the RFP Success Show. I am your host, Lisa Rehurick, the #1 sought-after authority on RFP success. And each week we bring you information, strategy, and resources to help you win more business through RFPs and hopefully have a little bit of fun doing it. So let's get this week's episode started. Today we are having a success conversation with Karie Cowden. She owns a company called Connect the Dot Promotions. She helps people get really cool promotional items to tell their story and to get marketing in front of their potential clients. I probably botched that all up. I'm going to let her tell you more about that. Karie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Sure. I'm so happy to have you on. First of all, the Success Conversations is one of my favorite podcasts to do because it's so fun to talk through real life examples, right, of people that are going through the trenches and all of that. But everybody, Karie was one of my first guests when I started a show. Before this podcast, really, I had a radio show on Phoenix Business Radio X, which was my first foray into podcasting, and she was one of my first guests. So welcome back, I should say, even though this is a different venue. And let's kick it off by having you tell our listeners a little bit more about you and what your company does.
Sure. So we are a promotional products company, and we are here local in Phoenix, Arizona. We've been around for 10 years, actually 11 years. We just celebrated our anniversary is April Fool's Day, which I always joke is like
fun.
The best anniversary. Our main focus is creating experiences around our clients' brands, utilizing promotional items. But we also are kind of moving a little bit into doing events too. So flash mobs, world record attempts, all that kind of stuff that we've done. And recently won a world record attempt with UMOM, New Day Center Homeless Shelter here in Phoenix. So pretty cool.
I saw that. That is very cool. I didn't actually know you guys were doing those experiences now. That is very fun.
Yes.
Very fun. Yeah. So do you work just with companies in the Phoenix area, or are you national or international?
We're really international. I mean, there's no boundaries as to where we can go. We do have clients, New Zealand, Spain.
Fun.
Yeah, it's kind of all over the place. But a lot of our clients are international, so that lends us to doing business with other locations.
Yeah. And for our listeners, just so you know, promotional products, I have had people like Karie help me with promotional products, and I've also gone online and just, sourced them myself. I gotta tell you, it is a no-brainer to find somebody and use them. Don't go online. Somebody like Karie can help you so much more with what you need. And because it's not just about like a cool little gizmo, it's about the message you're trying to send and what you're trying to get done to your clients or prospects to remember about you. So make sure you tap into somebody like Karie. Don't just go rogue on the internet. No.
We would really appreciate that.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about RFPs, because you are a fun little success story. And I love how you have been working on public sector RFPs for some time. So how long have you been responding to RFPs?
So we started in 2017.
Okay.
And by the time I met with your company, it was 2018, like a year of hitting my head against a wall, I feel like.
Yep.
And yeah, so about 2 years we've been doing it seriously.
And what made you jump into that space? Because you have a successful company outside of like the public sector stuff where you're not, or even corporate, sometimes you got to do RFPs, but you've got a successful business outside of responding to RFPs. So what made you decide to jump into the lovely world of RFP responding?
So it's ironic because this last RFP that we did was actually going to be our last go. And it was a no or go. We're not going to be doing this anymore because we had done at that time 8 RFPs and not won any. And it was within points or, just shy of where we needed to be. And a lot of it was, we're trying to take out the incumbent or what's the deal? But we are part of a couple different masterminds, and we always have to be evolving and figuring out new channels to, find for income. And one of the focuses was on the RFP world. So
interesting.
Yeah.
So you dove in, and it feels in the beginning, right, like it's going to be, oh, well, this isn't going to be bad. I just responded to this RFP and I put this in. And was that kind of how your how you felt about it in the beginning?
So I was fortunate because I had taken a couple workshops that you had done through the Women Business Enterprise Network, the WEB people.
Yep.
And I decided that it was going to be for sure somewhere I want to go, and I had a good framework. But even still then, it was just not an easy process. And every time we got done with one, it was like, you'd be like, okay, this is going to happen. This one's going to do it. And then it never happened.
Oh my gosh. So 8 RFPs you bid on, didn't win any of them, but you were so close. It's like playing the slots in Vegas, right? Like, oh my gosh, that I had 3 sevens, but one wasn't quite fully turned around. It was that close for you, right?
Right. And every time, and then part of what you had suggested is go to the follow-up and find out where you fell in the points, because everything's public information. And so we would do that every time and just deflate. And it was like, how long do you do this? It is a game of numbers. And then it's also, even though you are in the RFP world, I feel like you do need to kind of play in that space. So we did attend different procurement shows around so that we really were in front of the buyers so they could see we are a legitimate company. We have been around. And then explain to them, this has been a very corporate heavy kind of push that we've had, and now we want to go RFP. So we invested a ton of time and money into it.
Yeah. And what were some of the challenges you had aside from losing those 8? What were some of the challenges that you had just in the process in general?
So I don't know if it's the case with everybody. I only know what we deal with, but a promotional product and a stress ball can be super, super cheap, and it can be lead filled and a safety issue. It can be, there's never apples to apples unless
so true.
RFP comes to us with an item number, which doesn't happen often. So, are you going for price? Are you going for ability to do the contract? There's all this list of things that even the RFPs will tell you what they're looking for. And sometimes it is all on price.
Right.
Well, then we kind of shrink back a little bit because we're huge on safety, and we would never want the client that puts that logo on there to have a safety recall because they were trying to save money. So we're very cognizant of that when we go or no go for RFPs, because we have to cover them. They don't realize how much we have invested in it. So I think that's the hardest part, period, with any RFPs, is unless there's actual item numbers that are listed, you're never comparing apples to apples. So then the buyers don't know that. The procurement officer doesn't know. They're like, oh, this is cheaper. Well, it's not going to be cheaper by the time it falls out.
And it is cheaper, like what you buy, what you get, right? Like that's the other thing is, I'm sure all the listeners are the same, but I've had those stress balls that are like, oh my God, this one is so awesome. It feels good. It's really nice. And then the other one, like the little foam starts cracking and it's just gross and icky right out of the gate. So, that is really important. And the other important thing that you said there too is that you kind of said it indirectly, is you've got to really know, and I hound this into my people all the time, you got to really know where you are and aren't willing to play. So for you, if it's based on price, now you guys know, correct me if I'm wrong, now you guys know that's not for us and we're not going to get on. Yeah.
Right. And so, if we do go for it, we would put an assumption in there that this is reality. Like, we may not be the least expensive, but we're going to stick by this because we're protecting you in the end, in so many words.
Yeah, exactly. High quality and the safety, both.
Right.
Very, very cool. Yeah. I love that. So I want to talk, before we kind of get to your success, which I'm very excited about, I want to talk about how much time and effort and money you think you've put into, 8 RFPs is not a lot of work, right? Sorry, double negative there.
A lot
of work, and it can be a lot of money to put that, maybe not expense money, but time money and resource money into responding to stuff. So how much time and money do you think that you lost in those 8 responses?
So every RFP had a different success. So once you get to the RFP and it would be worth $15,000 over 5 years, or $15,000 per year over 5 years, or whatever that is, I didn't even figure that in. I was looking more at, and I don't think people think about this, the time that it takes, because in our case, we have, 20 different products you have to call, get pricing and all of that. figure all that out, set up charges. There's so many idiosyncrasies. It's not just like, I want this and I want this color. It's like the colors could even be different prices. So there's a ton
Ooh.
of process that has to go into every single SKU. And then the capabilities that we can offer to them and solve their pain points. And that was something that I was missing before we talked, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, is I wasn't showcasing, how we can help them enough. I was very much like, here's the ask, this is the question, here's the answer, because I thought they wanted it to be very rigid and just answer the question.
Yeah.
But I think overall, holistically, they would have preferred more into that. So all that being said, with the time, and then even just putting together the RFPs, if they want 5 different copies of it and they need to be in color, and then they need to be in a binder, and they need to be numbered, and then they need to be this, like, okay, time, but then, $50 per RFP would figure in just materials. And then, are you messengering it? Are you dropping it off? Like, it's just crazy. Yeah. And then I had mentioned we did those 2 different trade shows where they were for procurement. So that cost money to have a booth. So overall, I figured probably about $10,000 with time and actual money that we paid for the 8 RFPs, not counting the fact that we didn't win them. So there was all that money we lost too, So different how you want to look at it. But our strategy was, we're going to keep looking at it. We do quarterly meetings to make sure and check in and see. In this last quarter of 2018 was like, if we don't win one in the first quarter, we're not doing it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's such a hard, I always find it a really hard decision for people to make, because I do think that it takes some time and investment up front to even just get your footing and to get started with this and get some of those kind of that repository information, right, that you maybe haven't had to put anywhere else before. So you've got to write things, and it just takes some time to get your footing with it. So for you, that was 8 RFPs, about $10,000, not including the loss of dollars from not getting the business. And that was over a little bit over a year, right?
It was probably, I think the first one we did was November of 2017. Yeah, just over a year.
About a year and a half, yeah. And what's kind of interesting is Karie and I met early on. Obviously, she had said earlier she came to one of my workshops, and she had been talking to me after probably the first couple of losses, right? You were kind of like, maybe we should talk, maybe we should do something, and you were hesitant in the beginning, right? Why were you hesitant?
Because I didn't know if the incumbent could be tested, and I had already invested so much. So to invest more, I was like, and like I said, that last quarter of 2018 was when we were like, we might not be doing this. So the thought of investing more money to lose more money was like, do I really want to be doing this? But at that point, we were still in the go phase. Like, we're going to keep doing RFPs for the first quarter. So then that just kind of put me over the edge to say, I just need to, if I'm going to walk away from this, I want to know I've done everything I can and tried my best and had every tool and consultant available to me and utilized it before I say no. And if I've done that, then I can be okay. But I had not. You were like my hidden secret.
I love it. The hidden secret. The hidden secret. And, for the listeners, this isn't meant to be like a pitch fest for Lisa and her company here, right? But it's a conversation around, if it's not working for you, you've got to figure out a way to figure out what's going wrong, right? And so for you, Karie, you guys were getting feedback. They were telling you, what were they telling you as to the reasons why you didn't win?
So it depended on how much weight they put into pricing.
Okay.
So if it was something that was only 20% weight into pricing and then capability, we were missing the story, ironically, that we were trying to tell them. They were not understanding that we were capable of taking this on, because we're more than capable of taking all of that on. It's way less than any of the corporate clients we have, but we were not telling our story enough.
And why do you think that is? Do you think that's just because you couldn't see that you weren't telling it, or?
Yeah, even after I got all the feedback, it still didn't make sense until I went through and actually worked on it as a workshop. Again, it's not an RFP success advertisement, but this is my story. Yeah. And it was because of tools that made me sit down and ask my clients why they work with me and ask my employees why they work here. And before I did that, it's hard to talk about yourself, believe it or not, even though I'm in
Yeah.
marketing. You know, you're your worst marketer sometimes because you assume people should know, or that, you know, I don't know. It's hard to translate. But then after I took it back in and went through it and worked on it and thought back to going into the room to get the feedback and thinking these poor people had 50 different RFPs that they had to read through. And there were 4 different people reviewing this, and they were in a room without windows. And I'm like, that's so sad and depressing. And it was a black and white asked, answered. And so once I like thought about that and thought I should make it more of a fun experience for them when they're sitting in there. And we kind of had a little bit of fun with it when we responded and had color copies made, which was more expensive. And by the time you do 5 different copies, it's $100 in paper. But that set us apart, I think, because those poor people are looking at this over and over again.
Over and over. And yes, and if any of my listeners have been listening to me, I talk about that all the time. You know, these they're human beings, and I think we forget that sometimes. They're like real people over there reading 10 of these, and they're going to get bored really easily. And that color copy, even though it's painful to pay for up front, especially at that point where you're like, I don't know, this is maybe like our Hail Mary, we're going to do one more of these. It can be a little daunting. And the exercise she's talking about, by the way, is to really figure out your differentiators. And there's a podcast episode that I did the week before this. So if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to that about differentiators. Your differentiators are huge. And it's there's an exercise in there that she's talking about, which is you can't see your differentiators. You're too close to it. And if you go ask other people, like your clients and your employees, and you know, those are the 2 key ones, they're going to give you things that you just can't see or things that you take for granted. And that's what Karie did. Karie and her team did. So it worked. All right. So we're kind of teasing everybody with that. You respond to your 9th RFP. You're like, this is our Hail Mary. We're going to do one more, and tell us what happened.
So we turned it in January. It was supposed to be done and back to us by February 21st, which is another hard thing because you rush and get all this together, and then it's like, wait a month. And after that many rejections, we're like, okay, well, here we go. And then
how did you feel about it?
Pardon?
How did you feel about the RFP? Like, did you feel any different about what you were submitting?
It was definitely different than we'd ever done it. But I had changed throughout those 8 and talked to other people that do RFPs that aren't in the marketing world. So, you know, was their feedback good or bad? I don't know. But I felt good about it. But there was no reason to feel better about it other than it's adjusted a different way. We'll see if this works.
Okay.
Yeah. So we were supposed to hear back on the 21st of February, and we made teasers and all, or, you know, reminders. And I called and followed up, and they said, oh, well, the board met and they didn't have time to review this. So it's not until March 21st. And I was like,
oh no.
Okay. So that's fun because we had a hard deadline and it would be nice to get going. So we waited. And then the day that they had the meeting, the next day I followed up again and just sent an email and said, I know you guys had your meeting last night. I'm sure you're busy, but just want to see follow up. And she sent back the list of the people that had been approved and said she's going to upload everything that day to the site. So, and then we were on there, and I had tears.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I know I'm getting a little choked up even when you called me, because she actually called me and let me know. I was a little teary-eyed because it's such a fun success story, because it really, at the end of the day, you know, I know that you had hesitated to get help and to put the investment in that. And then you finally were like, I'm going to do it. And knowing that this was like, because I didn't know this part, knowing that this was going to be like your Hail Mary, this is the last one. If we don't get this, we're done. What a fun moment for you guys.
Yes.
To experience. How did the team feel?
We were all very excited. Kim, who's on it with me, she was on her way to visit her daughter in Las Vegas. So I called her, and she was in the car, and her husband and her were yelling and screaming, and we were all excited. And my family was in town. Like everybody knows how hard I've worked on it. Yeah. And I'm very open, and my family's like my village. So even my friends, like everybody knew that I was, you know, I'm doing RFPs, and if I won one, it'd be really great. And it was very needed at the moment. It was very, very fun win.
Oh my gosh, so fun.
Yeah.
Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Um, and you talked about kind of injecting that story. Is there anything else? What other changes did you feel that you made that made a difference for you with that, other than kind of that story piece?
Well, the repository that you talked about is really important because that did speed up the process for us. And so the tweak that we made was simply the stories and having color and having it all branded before. So instead of just what they asked for, we had a separate tab that had actual pictures of our clients in what they were, they're wearing or they're holding it up. And we actually just, here's my contact and my referral. Here's the picture of what happened. Here's the story. Here's the ROI. And we actually literally told the story and gave factual data instead of just fluff.
Yay! I love that.
I think, and that's now in our repository. So every time we get one, we say, Google review us and then send us a picture, and then we'll include that, obviously after asking permission, like, can you be a referral for this RFP? And now we've got this, little library started.
And so much easier to have that ready to go versus, because I know a lot of my clients will be, oh my gosh, we've got this RFP, now we've got to go collect all of this. And it's too
Right.
hard. There's a lot going on in that RFP. So kudos to you guys for doing that up front. Yay. Awesome. All right. So did you feel like you were blind to anything? Meaning, like, what were you not seeing? We kind of talked about that a little bit, but was there anything that you weren't really seeing that kind of eventually you were like, oh, I was too close to that, or I was taking that for granted?
There's buzzwords in my industry like creativity, super fast service, all those things that we do. And I get annoyed when people say they do it because you don't know if they do it until you've experienced
Right.
the service, And so I was very hesitant to put, we're a creative agency. We do great service. The customer service is phenomenal. And my clients tell me that, and I know that. We've been around for 11 years, but to tell that through an RFP was really difficult for me. And I don't know why. After I went through that exercise, I'm like, this is what we are. Like, I don't know why I have this holdback. I just don't want to be like the rest saying they're creative and not really being creative. I want to be that. So I think it was, how do I get, my biggest blindness was my authenticity. Like, I need to be authentic. I wasn't authentic. I was kind of like, I keep saying it, but it was like a process for me. It was like, I wanted to be very serious and black and white. Like, here's your question, here's your answer. And I think that everyone reviewing preferred, I mean, I'm also in marketing, so it should be creative and fun. So I think I just was too close to being jaded, maybe. I don't know the word.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny because we do laugh about that, right? We can do for everybody else, but when it comes to ourselves, it's like we're a hot mess. My favorite quote by Les Brown is, "You can't see the picture when you're inside the frame." It's so true. When we're so close to something, it's really hard to see all of that. And just a little piece there to, if you're going to write things like we're creative, or we've got, we're always on time, or whatever that is, if you can substantiate that claim with those testimonials and those Google reviews and any of that, then the reviewers will believe you. And that makes it more authentic and more real, and will feel that in your heart. Did you guys do, well, I think that you did that, right?
That's exactly what we did. Like, we literally took a picture of them wearing whatever or holding whatever, and we said, this is what happens, this is what they did, they came to us. And we gave examples that weren't thousands of pieces. It was, they needed 24 shirts and they needed them in a week. And we worked with them for a design. They didn't have artwork. We told the whole story. And so it was like, here's a problem we could come up against. Maybe artwork's not there. Oh, they can fix that. Maybe they need it quick. Oh, they can fix that. Oh, they need creativity. Oh, look at, there they are. They're super happy in their cute t-shirts, So like you said, it was factual data, and we made it more fluffy, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So the fluffy isn't fluff if you can substantiate your claims, right? So I always tell people, substantiate your claims, and then you can add a little bit of interest. So the readers are interested, like you said. We wanted to make it fun for them. And I love that you thought about that. So congratulations again. So exciting. So what would you tell our listeners? What advice would you give our listeners who are struggling with some of the same things that you struggled with on those first 8?
So I at least my experiences was you're not going to win the first one or the second one, and maybe not the third one, and maybe not the fourth one. And it's a marathon, and it needs to be a very strategic decision, in my opinion, to go for it, because it is not inexpensive. It is expensive. It does cost money to do this. And then I do believe in outside consultants and people that are not in the frame with you, because it's very easy to get lost. And whatever feedback you can get is priceless, really.
Yeah. Well, you know, again, like for us, we love those stories because we're like, oh my gosh, what we did really works. Of course, we know it works, but it's always so much better when we hear that from our clients. Like, oh yeah, they just won the first one out of 9. They're like 1 for 9 now. And that's because we were able to jump in there and help and help outside that box. So that's awesome. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here with me again and for sharing your story and for sharing your pain points, because I think so many people can relate to that. The RFPs are hard. Everybody that I talk to, they're just they can be really painful. And when you're not winning them, they're even more painful. So I appreciate you being willing to be raw and real with us.
No problem.
So how, for all of our listeners that need promo items, because I know you guys are out there and you need to call Karie, how can they get in touch with you?
So our website is ctdpromotions.com. So it's abbreviated, connect the dots, ctdpromotions.com. And our phone number is on there and everything, but just in case, 602-944-5592.
Perfect. And again, they're located in Phoenix, but they work internationally. All of that information will be in the show notes as well. Karie, thank you again so much for being here. I greatly appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for your help.
Yes, of course. Congratulations.
Thank you.
The winning team. We love it. We love it. All right. Thank you to all of our listeners who have tuned in today, and tune in next week for yet another episode of the RFP Success Show.